Now, with almost all sectors having returned to work today with a level 3 of the lockdown, it is estimated that 8 million additional people were expected to return to their workplace under level 3. This depends, on the other hand, on how many companies will open their doors. The Department of Employment and Labour is observing oversight visits to monitor compliance of employers and the workers returned to work today. We take the discussion further now with the Inspector General of Employment and Labour, Aggy, Moiloa, who joins me now live via Skype. Moiloa, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the SABC News channel. So firstly, just talk to us about your findings really during your compliance oversight visits.
Okay, so far, Palisa, since the last time we spoke, which feels like forever, we've conducted over 30,500 inspections, and our findings are pretty much that compliance rates are still at a minimal. As I'm speaking to you right now, the compliance rates are sitting at between 55 and 56% across the board. That is including both the private and public sector.
But I would imagine the numbers may have gone a bit up from today, since many sectors of the economy were opened during level 3.
Sorry, Paris, I didn't catch the last bit.
I was saying that I would believe that the data that you have just provided may go a bit up, perhaps because we now have a number of sectors that have also opened from today as the country went into level 3 of the lockdown.
Oh, yes, the numbers would have gone up in terms of the inspections that we've conducted thus far. But we anticipate that the demand of our services is going to go even higher, because the number of workplaces that have been opened have been increased, given alert level 3, and the fact that almost more than 8 million workers are now, 6 or 8 million, if I'm not mistaken, have now taken to the workplaces. So yes, in terms of the numbers that we need to cover, definitely have gone up. But in terms of the actual inspections that we've conducted, we're sitting in the region of about 3,500 that we've done thus far.
All right, so 56% of the inspections that have been conducted by yourselves and your colleagues indicate that there is that compliance. So talk to us about this 44%. What is happening with that 44%? What is it that companies are not doing to comply with these lockdown regulations and precautionary measures?
Okay, you know, with regards to the primary law, it remains the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And with the COVID-19 directive that was issued out on the 29th of April, that spells out quite clearly what should be in place for workplaces to be ready. We found that the 44% that is not complying, by and large, their risk assessments are not responsive to COVID-19. You'll find that workplaces have not been adapted to COVID-19 requirements in terms of workstations themselves, in terms of social distancing. We also find that in some instances, it's engineering controls that should be in place. Like if you look into issues of ventilation, that should be in place. You find that that is found to be wanting. Also, furthermore, the fact that employers have got to provide their workers with PPEs. You find that in some instances there isn't even adequate PPEs to be provided. So those are amongst the findings that we've picked up during this time.
And that particular issue, Moiloa, brings me to my next question. I want you to give us an understanding as to what happens in an instance where employees refuse to work for the mere fact that precautionary measures are not being taken into consideration by their employers. Do they have the right to say, precautionary measures have not been implemented in this regard, therefore I cannot report for duty or I cannot continue to work?
I'm actually happy that you've asked that question, Palisa, because we've always said that inspectors cannot be everywhere. We don't have the luxury of limitless numbers, but workers are always in workplaces at the shop floor level. So they are actually the first line of defense. They've got to make sure that where they are exposed in their workplaces, there's compliance with issues of health and safety. And by all means, they've got a right to refuse to work in an instance where their own health and safety will be compromised. Like, for instance, if the workplace, all the workplaces have got to provide necessary PPEs. And if those are not provided for, then workers have got a right not to expose themselves to undue environments in terms of health and safety. So yes, they've got all the rights.
And the reality is such disputes do take place in the workplace. And in some instances, they may even lead to dismissal of the employers. What happens in such instances where an employee is dismissed for the fact that they refused to work because they felt that precautionary measures were not put in place, they felt that their lives were put in danger?
Fortunately, with regards to the provision of the law, if you look into the occupational health and safety, any workplace that employs 20 or more people, it is a requirement by law that there must be a health and safety committee in place. So the issue of ensuring that workplaces are compliant from an employee perspective wouldn't just rest with an individual. But to answer your question directly, in instances where you find that a person has been dismissed due to the fact that they stood up for their own rights, there's recourse. The law is on their side. It will be unfair labor practices, and therefore such cases are reportable, in particular to the CCMA, so that due processes could be followed and make sure that workers are protected as much as possible.
Yeah, and we also understand that companies are also expected to appoint COVID-19 compliance officers. Have they done that?
Yeah.
Is it the case with most companies?
Well, those companies that would have declared as compliant would have done that. They do appoint compliance officers. Some companies also would appoint wellness champions, so they go a step beyond that. But in instances where you find that such is not happening, and we assess that the overall compliance with the health and safety prescripts is such that we need to issue out notices, then by all means we do that. We do issue out various notices, and the nature of a notice that we issue out will depend on the areas that are being flouted and the severity of the flouting itself.
So as we said in conclusion that a number of sectors have actually returned to work today, we've got domestic workers who have also reported for duty today. What conversations are you having with the employers as well as their employees regarding the spread of the coronavirus, but most importantly, their safety at work, safety in the workplace?
The type of conversations that we're having are advocacy related. First of all, we issue out information with regards to what should happen. We engage on advocacy so that there's an awareness, and I want to emphasize that the issue of compliance is not just the responsibility of the employer, but the employees also have a role to play. The occupational health and safety prescript is also quite clear in that regard, in that as much as we say employers have got to provide a safe and healthy environment, employers also have to come to the party. So in our quest of doing our work, we always emphasize this. And, we also emphasize that the cost of non-compliance is greater than the cost of complying. Because in other instances, we find that employers tend to cut some corners, wanting to save money here and there. But once there's a non-compliance, the cost thereof becomes higher. You may find that people lose their lives, people in this instance will contract diseases, productivity levels go down, and it has a spin-off effect where you find that even when productivity levels are not what they're supposed to be, even the economy doesn't grow the way it should. So the issue of compliance has got a greater role to play in the labor market and in ensuring that the economy of the country grows the way it should, while safeguarding the interests of both the employers and the employees.
All right, time constraints. That's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you so much for coming through. Aggy Moiloa is the Inspector General of Employment and Labour from the Department of Employment and Labour, joining us now via Skype.